Mic check one,
Yo,
two.
get out of here with them weak ass shoes, yo.
Balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
What's up, Balls Deep fam? To another episode of Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan, where we dive balls deep in the hottest stories in sports. If you're new to the program, I'm your host Devin, and I'm joined by my co-host Jovan. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about some college football and NFL, mostly NFL, but we have one topic that we want to touch on in regards to the college football. But before we get started, congratulations to our winner of our giveaway, Taylor. Shout out to you. Thank you everyone for participating. And just look out and continue to show love, and we'll show love back sooner or later. So make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. Before we get started, make sure to comment at the end of the video or whenever you feel like you need to say something, and leave us some reviews so we know how well we're doing, what we need to improve on, and so forth. But the first topic that we're going to be talking about today, the very first topic we're going to be talking about today is the fact that we're going to have our very first woman to officiate the Super Bowl, Miss Sarah Thomas. Shout out to you. This is groundbreaking for women in sports and in women in football in general. Because not only is she officiating the Super Bowl, I believe there's two other female coaches on the two Super Bowl teams that will be a part of this grand opening. I'm expecting them to take a picture or a photo to start the game. What are your thoughts on it?
On her being the first woman to officiate a Super Bowl, it's great. I mean, it's good to see more diversity in sports in general, but as well as the NFL. Obviously, we've been seeing it a lot more noticeably, especially. I mean, we've had quite a few topics over, even just the last few episodes about new women hires or a woman or so. It's definitely trending upward, which is good. Hopefully, we can see it a lot more in the future. I know some people had issue with it because they didn't think she's been a ref long enough, and they feel like, there are people that have been refs really long, and have waited for the opportunity. But I really don't care. In my opinion, it doesn't bother me how long someone has been in a position, as long as the people in charge genuinely feel as though she deserves to be there, because she deserves to be there, not just because she's a woman, but because she genuinely deserves to officiate a Super Bowl game. So as long as they feel that way, it doesn't bother me. I mean, she's even received a stamp of approval from Sean Payton. A coach like Sean Payton of the New Orleans Saints has come out and said uh, earlier, as when she first got hired as a full-time ref, I believe in 2019, saying she's definitely ready for the full-time position, and he likes her demeanor and the way she carries herself, and so getting a stamp of approval from somebody like that, definitely leaves a vote of confidence in me, and it should for other NFL fans as well. So like I said, I mean, if you have a problem with it because she hasn't been a ref long, I mean, she's only been a ref since 2015, full-time since 2019, I get it, but as long as she deserves to be there, which I don't see any reason why she doesn't deserve to be there, um, then, it's great to me.
I mean, it just goes to show how well she is at her job. Because if you think about it, the referees that are selected to, officiate these playoff games are the top of the cream of the crop.
Yeah.
Essentially, like you're getting graded throughout the regular season on how well you perform as an official, and basically the top officials throughout the season get selected to, officiate these playoff games. And obviously they narrowed the bunch down as the playoffs, as the deeper we get into the playoffs, because there's fewer games to officiate. So for her to reach the Super Bowl and be a part of the officiating staff just goes to show how well she is at her job.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Quickly
the
as she's
fact
done it too.
the fact that she's a top official in the league in a short period of time, and a lot of people question whether she was ready or for the opportunity, but she was given the opportunity. We talked about people given the opportunity to perform. She was given the opportunity to perform, and she not only performed, but she did it at a very high level. And it goes to show that you just you have to give people opportunities to show what they have in store, and if they fail, that's on them. And if they prosper, like Sarah Thomas, then it opens the door for many other people to follow.
Definitely, completely.
But that goes to show, or not goes to show. And now that we shift over, this is the one topic that we want to talk about in college football. The University of Tennessee, they fired their head coach Jeremy Pruitt with cause after an investigation. This all happened after the debacle of a head coaching hire that they had when they hired this guy. So they went out and they tried to hire Greg Schiano. We know his past when he coached, I believe, at Rutgers. Didn't go out so well, especially after he was a head coach with the Bucks. His reputation wasn't so high. People didn't think so highly of him. So when Tennessee hired him as their head coach, they basically protested. They didn't want him to be the head coach of the University of Tennessee. So Tennessee, they backed off and they hired Jeremy Pruitt. And now, after this investigation, he was fired because it was found out that he would give recruits money in McDonald's bags on their college visit. I'm pretty sure there's more to the story, but that's kind of what I got from it. He was paying these recruits on their college visits to kind of sway them to come to Tennessee over other options that they may have had. And in doing so, they would hide it in the McDonald's bag, because who would think, hey, we're giving them McDonald's to feed them on their visit? But little did they know there was money in the bag. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I believe that the University of Tennessee fans were protesting the Greg Schiano hire because I believe he had a case of domestic abuse open at the time. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I'm pretty sure that was a big reason of what was going on there, that they were investigating and people really weren't comfortable with that situation. But with that being said, I mean, the college scandal of, coaches paying players to come to their team or doing what all different variations of types of things and giving gifts and money is not new. Obviously it's not allowed, it's not to be done. I'm not against paying players in any way. I do think some of these guys should be able to make money off their names and likeness. However, according to the rules now, it's illegal. So obviously there's no room for it right now. And that's why, I mean, it doesn't surprise me when stories like this come out because, in my honest opinion, I feel like these are things that just happen continuously. And really, I won't say all, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens on a lot of schools, especially the really big-time schools that are capable of, getting recruits consistently because kids want to go to these top programs and play sports for them, but especially when you got a lot of these kids coming out and don't really have anything to their name, it's an easy way to take advantage of the fact that you want them to come play for your school. So, I mean, this isn't new. I just feel like this happens all the time. It won't stop happening. All the more reason for the NCAA to just kind of get over themselves and kind of start working with these players. But I mean, it's just stupid. There's really not much else to say about it. Like I said, I just think, I mean, coaches if there were tons and tons more people that do this, but I just don't see why coaches continuously do it after, one coach after another, ends up getting caught and then they never have a coaching job again. So it's like you're risking your entire career to basically steal players.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I do think these players deserve to get paid, at least for the likeliness of their name. They should be able to, you know, get paid off of that at least. I mean, I believe Mike Davis came out and said, not in regards to this topic, but the fact that these players were getting paid somehow or whatever, and he was like, "Why didn't I get paid?" And Todd Gurley replied to him, "Because you ain't signed any jerseys." So I find that hilarious, but I do think they deserve to get paid off their likeliness. They sign a jersey, why not get paid for it? It's their name. A lot of these players, the highest level that they reach is college, and that's risky as it is. And sometimes they're a promising prospect, but the highest level they reach is college because they get injured in college, and it's career ending. So getting paid, college students getting paid, they deserve to get paid eventually or as soon as possible, I should say. But in regards to this, you're right. It has been happening for years, and it's going to continue to happen, whether it's against the rules or not. I think it was stupid of Jeremy Pruitt to do so in the manner that he did, because it's not, low at all. I guess if you're trying to be low and get away with it, that's not a way to do it.
Yeah.
But like you said, you're stealing talent, especially because he's already coaching a team in the SEC, which is the top conference in college football at the moment. So why would you need to, steal talent?
Yeah.
Are you afraid of your competition? Are you afraid of competition? It says a lot about him as a coach. It makes it seem like he's not confident in his ability to recruit.
Definitely.
So it, like you said, it's taking advantage of where these kids come from, because a lot of these kids come from, uh, families that don't account for a lot of money. So any money that they can get their hands on, they're going to try their best to help support their family any way possible.
Yeah. I
But
mean, not only that, but just the fact that you're recruiting these guys that you're supposed to be coaching. And I mean, I get it. I mean, it hasn't really affected relationships in the past like that. I mean, possibly. I'm not really sure. I'm not in the locker room with these guys, but I just feel like it's kind of weird that you're supposed to be recruiting these young men and kind of, you know, showing them how to be men and how to carry themselves, especially onto the next level in the NFL. And you're starting off kind of on the wrong foot. You know what I mean? And you're giving these people, these ideas in their head that these things are okay. When you're supposed to be leading young men, um, it just doesn't look good for anybody to be a leader of young men, to be doing things like that. And kind of, when you're a college coach or an NFL coach, or just a mentor in general, you're supposed to lead by example. And to start off on, let me do this, illegal transaction or what have you, whatever the case might be, it doesn't leave your university or even maybe some other players who don't completely agree with what you're doing on the side. It doesn't really give them, the most confidence in you as a leader of young men. And that's just not the right way to start your college coaching career, or at least not for
I
a specific university in general.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Just to put it, straightforward, he's being shallow. You're supposed to be preparing these young men for the real world, teach them about character, how to carry themselves moving forward. And if you're starting off on a shallow foot, then you're teaching them that it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, you're not only, showing that you're not confident in your abilities, but now these players are going to start questioning you and your decisions, possibly. And then come the time when they're in the real world, they might start making those shallow decisions and refer back to you like, hey, my coach said it was okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, it's not the right decision. I do think college players should get paid, because I think the ability to get paid will eliminate a lot of what's going on with this recruitment. But to shift over back to the NFL, one of you know one of the biggest athletes in the sport, or at his position, I should say, played for your favorite college football team, and that's Ohio State. And I'm speaking about Michael Thomas. So they lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs, the divisional round, and comes out afterwards that he's receiving multiple surgeries this offseason on his ankle, which he was dealing with a lot this season, and that's why he missed some time. But the fact of the matter is he chose to play in the playoffs because he didn't want to miss his last chance to possibly win a Super Bowl with Breeze, because what a lot of people knew is it's Breeze's last season and he's going into commentating after. So for me, I think this guy is tough as nails, because you pride as a receiver, you pride yourself on your legs. Like, that's how you get open. And with him, he's not really a fast guy. He beats you on
I mean,
his cuts.
they don't call him Slant Boy for no reason.
And his route running. So
create separation,
So although he didn't really do anything, I think if he went out there and made some noise in terms of production on this injury, I think he'd get more praise than he is now. But instead of he's getting criticized a lot because Slant Boy got locked up. So, but I'm actually impressed. The guy's, it shows how tough he is, and it shows that he's thinking beyond himself. He's thinking about his teammates, and specifically Breeze, who should go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever.
No, definitely. I mean, so this is something that, as an Ohio State fan, this is something that I've already known. I mean, this Michael Thomas has been a dog since the university, and honestly, I mean, he really never got the credit until he got to the league, and it's something that nobody other than really people that were watching him in college kind of expected to see from him at the next level. But aside from that, like, I feel like it's more so the way Michael Thomas carries himself, and not that there's anything wrong with the way that he carries himself. I love Michael Thomas. Like I said, he's a dog. He's always been that way, and so this doesn't surprise me. But I feel like the personality, just even the fact that he has any kind of personality, you know, like generally, fans don't like the type of personality of a Michael Thomas, and same with the media. And so I feel like so often he's made out to be this villain that he's not. I think he's genuinely a good dude that just likes playing football, and he does sometimes have things to say, but who in the NFL or in sports in general doesn't sometimes have something to say? So I'm impressed by it, but not surprised. Michael Thomas is a dog. Ultimately, I think people are going to hate on him regardless, because he is so talented, and he did kind of come out of nowhere and then, kind of started talking his talk as well as walking his walk. And people are always going to be a fan of you when you're playing well, but as soon as you start to say anything or talk any junk or even just show any little bit of confidence, it's when they start to hate on you, because, they just want you to really just play football and shut up. I mean, genuinely, that's how some people are. The minute people love Juju until he started doing his TikTok dances and enjoying himself, and then now he's like villain number one in the NFL. So it's like anytime anybody really starts to show any personality in any sports league, it's like, what are you doing? But it's like they're just being themselves. So it's kind of unfortunate that he gets so much hate. But like I said, I've always been a fan of Michael Thomas. I'll always be a fan of Michael Thomas. He's a dog. And it really doesn't surprise me. Although I wish he could have had a big game, it's not that easy to do so on injury. There are guys who have done it. Everybody's different. It would have been great to see him have a big game. He didn't, but he still went out there. And like you said, he put it all on line for his teammates, his Hall of Fame quarterback that he has tremendous respect for, and wanted to really just help him get a Super Bowl before he was out of there. So, but much respect to Michael Thomas.
Yeah, definitely much respect to him. But shifting over to the quarterbacks, we talked about a Hall of Fame quarterback. and there's another Hall of Fame quarterback or future Hall of Fame quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. Um, he had a lot of words to say post conference after his conference championship loss to the Buccaneers. You know more about what he said in terms of his quote, so I want to let you read it or
Yeah. Well,
paraphrase what he
the
said.
basics of it is him saying, um, so the basis of what Aaron Rodgers said was, a lot of guys are uncertain, futures are uncertain, including his. However, there were also reports just today, him saying that, he doesn't see a reason why he wouldn't be in Green Bay next year. So there has been a lot of talk of like, him just kind of trying to scare the GM into, well, not the GM, but the team into paying him more money, one, especially off of an MVP caliber season. He's probably going to win it, in my opinion. He should. Um,
Yeah, he should.
but, so there's been talk that maybe he's just trying to scare the ownership into giving him more money, as well as, kind of taking a little shot at his GM in the sense of like, you drafted a quarterback with one of your first picks in the draft, and you still had one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Um,
Oh, you had the MVP.
yeah, really. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, the MVP, MVP caliber quarterback still, and you drafted a quarterback with one of your first picks when you could have drafted somebody who, you know, in
Made an
all,
impact.
yeah, and in all, honesty, could have won you the game this past Sunday. I mean, you never know. It could have been that player that you needed to make a play to win a game, or put in a position to win you the game. So,
For sure.
instead of doing that, they drafted a running back and a quarterback, two positions that they weren't really necessarily in dire need of. And
With their
so,
top two picks.
yeah, definitely. So, I don't see Aaron Rodgers going anywhere. I think Green Bay would be stupid to let, one of the most talented football players to ever walk the earth walk away, in his prime, really, because he's on an MVP worthy season right now. So it's not like he's, declining. I mean, he could decline as soon as next year, but as of right now, he's not shown any sense of decline. So I don't think he's out of Green Bay next year. I think they'd be dumb to let him go. However, I do think that Green Bay has a lot of work to do in terms of like putting pieces around them to secure the future of Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Because if I'm him, I'm completely unhappy with the way the season transpired. Because even though you've made it as far as you did, uh, as good as Aaron Rodgers is, he knows in his mind that they could have done better. And, you know, knowing the draft that they had, literally everybody was saying they had the worst draft. Um,
We even said it.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like it sucks if you're Aaron Rodgers. You know that your team could have done better for you, and not. I don't mean the players surrounding you. I mean the GMs and ownership could have done better by you.
Yeah, they with the first two picks they could have easily went, defense in terms of helping the run defense because the run defense has been an issue for them for some time now. Or they could have went out and got Aaron Rodgers another weapon. He there's no such thing as as too many weapons.
Yeah,
You just look at Kansas City for example and Tampa Bay. They have tons of weapons, a plethora of weapons, and their quarterbacks are feasting, and that's why they're in the championship.
yeah,
Uh, Aaron Rodgers, I feel like was let down by his receivers because there's some plays in the NFC Championship where they dropped it in the end zone, and it could have been their chance of becoming victorious and moving on to the Super Bowl. But it just goes to show that Aaron Rodgers can't do this by himself.
no,
And
nobody
like
can.
you said, he's taking a shot at his GM and his team. But I wouldn't leave out the fact that he can pull a Brett Favre. And although the situations are different because Brett Favre was a bit older at the time, but he can threaten to retire should they not trade him somewhere else. Adam Scheffner, uh, he mentioned this, but he can basically threaten to retire if they don't trade you to a specific location, like the 49ers or the Rams, who could use upgrading the quarterback, and they're essentially one step away.
The Bears.
Well, they're not going to the Bears. But uh, in doing that for those other teams, it'll recruit free agents to their team.
100%.
Why can't you go out and get an Odell Beckham Jr. who's most likely on the trade block to pair with a Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers? Why not go out and grab a Will Fuller in free agency? You try to trade for him. Why not go get him? I think this upcoming offseason will ultimately determine whether Aaron Rodgers is in Green Bay next season or not. I think he let out his frustration post game, and it's only going to depend on what they do from here. But to shift over, we have some other quarterback news. Matthew Stafford and the Lions mutually agreed to part ways, which just means he's still under contract, but it just means that they're going to be trading him this offseason. To whom, may I ask? We don't know. The top choices for me would be either San Fran or Indianapolis. I think Matthew Stafford is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the league, and he's essentially wasted his talent in Detroit. Outside, once Calvin Johnson left, they really haven't surrounded him with enough talent to succeed.
Yeah.
So putting him in a must-win team like Indianapolis, where you just plug him away with a good defense and some like a good offensive line and some offensive weapons, that's going to be a problem. I don't really see him going anywhere else. But I read something about possibly the Dallas Cowboys. If they let Dak Prescott walk, maybe Matthew Stafford is an option to plug him there, and they do that. That's a scary sight.
No, I mean, there's literally um, so many teams that could use the talents of a Matthew Stafford. I mean, you could pick almost anywhere in the NFL, almost, because obviously there are those teams that have their quarterback of the future. But you could literally pick almost any franchise in this NFL league and plug a guy like Matthew Stafford, and it'd be lovely. But there's plenty of options. I mean, there's the Colts, like you mentioned. I mean, even in thinking outside the box, possibility that Drew Brees retires in New Orleans. I mean, that's more of a long shot. But if they decide not to go Jameis or Taysom, Matthew Stafford is there. I mean, there's there's more teams that could use the talents of a Matthew Stafford than there are teams that can't. I mean, that's just genuinely how it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I think Detroit will probably be receiving a shit ton of calls for him. And honestly, you'd be stupid not to want a quarterback like Matthew Stafford on your team. I mean, I agree completely. I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks that we've seen because he's been elite for years, but you don't really hear his name mentioned amongst those top guys.
Because he's in Detroit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and Detroit is known for wasting talent. I mean, you know what I mean? So,
but like I think Cam Newton's returning to New England next season. Although like they didn't have the greatest year, they were depleted. They didn't really have weapons. They had a lot of opt-outs in terms of players,
especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah,
which their defense got better late in the year.
And although they didn't have a great season, he still had his second best season in terms of completion percentage, and he wasn't dealt a fair share in New England. So I do think Belichick will bring him back just to give him an opportunity to have an offseason, especially with a year under his belt within the system and things of that nature. But should they move on from Cam Newton, Matthew Stafford is a possibility, especially, let's say, they go out and get Matthew Stafford, or if Matthew Stafford gets traded to San Fran, Garoppolo they can then step in and take Garoppolo back if they're still interested, which they seem to be.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's really no short, list of options here. You could really pick almost any location, but any location you bring them in, I wouldn't say any, but very, very many locations you bring them to, you become an immediate contender with the Matthew Stafford.
So there's many teams that are out there are looking for a quarterback, and they might look at Matthew Stafford, but there's another quarterback out there that's going to be at the top of everyone's list. And should they not get this guy, Matthew Stafford is always a good option, a backup option. But Deshaun Watson, he wants out of Houston. He's came out and said that regardless of who they hire at, head coach, even though he wants Eric Bieniemy, should they hire Eric Bieniemy, he still wants out. Like
Yeah.
wants nothing to do with Houston. I think Houston, not only the Texans but the Rockets, and the Astros. Houston in general is a shit show. Everyone wants out. So Deshaun Watson came out and said he wants out. He wants out regardless of who they hire, and he named his top two, landing spots: the Jets and the Dolphins. And he picked the Jets over the Dolphins because of their hire of head coach and Robert Saleh. He he's heard good things about him. He likes what he sees, and he was also a recommendation that he mentioned to the Texans to interview, which they didn't do. So the Jets, I know you don't like that landing spot for Deshaun Watson, but I honestly don't think it's as bad of a landing spot as people may think because of the amount of cap space that they have and draft capital that they have, that they can go out and grab him and still be able to surround him with enough weapons on offense and upgrade their defense. Because a lot of people are going to be recruited to the Jets defensively because of Robert Saleh.
Yeah.
They love him. He's a player's coach. And offensively, you bring Deshaun Watson, someone like Allen Robinson might pick to play with the Jets over the Giants or any other team because their quarterback is Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. No.
And easily that would be his best quarterback that he's played with his entire career.
Definitely. I mean, me saying I don't want to see Deshaun Watson in a Jets jersey isn't me saying that I don't think that it's a great fit. It's a great fit. It's more personal reasons. I just don't want to see him in that ugly ass green. Um, but, but with that being said, I mean that's obviously a great landing spot for Deshaun Watson. As much as I'd hate to see him there, but I mean there are plenty of great landing spots. I mean the same thing I said about Matthew Stafford can be said almost tenfold about Deshaun Watson because he's just as talented, if not more, and he's much younger. So you're obviously going to get him tenured on your roster for a lot longer than you might get a Matthew Stafford. Um, Personally, I think aside from the Giants, obviously, because who wouldn't want Deshaun Watson as your quarterback of the future? Um, Aside from them, my favorite landing spot or favorite possible landing spot is the 49ers. I'd love to see him on the
Yes,
49ers more than any team. Um,
I
Obviously,
agree.
they were very close to returning the glory with Jimmy Garoppolo a few years ago. Um, Obviously, they were kind of torn up by injuries in this last season, this COVID season. Um, but with the returning guys that they'll have and the upgrade at quarterback of Deshaun Watson, I think immediately, in my opinion, they become one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win the Super Bowl. I think they're capable of beating the Chiefs. I think even with the team they had with Garoppolo, they were capable of beating the Chiefs, although it didn't look good. Um, but I think bringing Deshaun Watson to your team, obviously, having the guys return from injury and then, with the draft class, I think they're more than capable of, being the team to win a Super Bowl immediately with Deshaun Watson. So I'd love to see him go to the 49ers.
Yeah, outside of the Giants, the more realistic option, San Fran is my dream landing spot for Deshaun Watson. My girlfriend is a 49ers fan, so I tend to watch them a lot. But just picturing Watson in that Shanahan offense, it's like magic. It's
George
like
Kittle about
magic.
to break that Travis Kelsey record that Travis Kelsey just broke from George Kittle.
Yeah, because he's more accurate than Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's they're yes they're a run heavy offense, but you get Deshaun Watson as your quarterback, it's going to be more relieving on his aspect because he's not going to have as much on his shoulders, but you can do a lot more with Deshaun Watson, like run an option play or
Yeah.
or other things like that. So
Not to mention their defense is already stacked. I mean, they weren't looking
yeah,
that great last year because, like I said, they had some of the worst injuries of any team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they were missing their one of their best defensive players in Nick Bosa, Nick Bosa last year. So, but I
they were
think
missing
that's
just more than
yeah,
him. But
yeah, no, definitely. But that's what I'm saying. I mean, they had a plethora of injuries throughout their team. So I think the addition of Deshaun Watson for them would be a dream come true for 49ers fans, honestly.
And this is perfect timing to shift over to our next topic, just because we talked about Deshaun Watson wanting to go to the Jets because of Robert Saleh and the fact that he doesn't want to stay in Houston regardless of who they hire. So we're talking about the coaching hires thus far, and the fact that there's a lack of diversity going on with these hires. So Houston has yet to hire somebody. It looks like they're waiting out for Bieniemy, just so they can try to sway Watson to come back. If I'm Bieniemy, I stay in KC. I do not go to Houston at all. I do ultimately think that they'll end up with Josh McDaniels as as their head coach, because him and Casario, their new GM, are buddy buddy. So I'm expecting that to be the hire, especially because if you're not planning to have Watson, then you clearly just have to have a plan in place, you know, future references. But outside of Robert Saleh, there's no minority candidate there's no other minority candidate that was hired, which is questionable because there's so many minority candidates that were qualified. Just look at the Super Bowl matchup in itself. You have Todd Bowles, you have Byron Leftwich, you have Eric Bieniemy. There's a lot of people or a lot of minority candidates that are qualified to be a head coach. Just look at the conference championship. You had Leslie Frazier, the defensive coordinator of the Bills. The list can continue. Just I think that people have yet to learn, and there's some hires that make sense. So like Urban Myers to Jacksonville makes a ton of sense, especially for a young up and coming team that's rebuilding. I think he's a perfect fit there. Robert Saleh, I like him with the Jets. Arthur Smith, I think, is a really good fit for Atlanta and what they're trying to do with that team. The ones that concern me is Nick Sirianni with Philly. I get he's coming from Indy, and it seems like they hired more for Carson Wentz, which to me still doesn't make any sense. They're probably better off moving on from him, to be honest. But he was out of the blue hire, especially when they were talking about other candidates being the lead candidates for that position. Dan Campbell, we seen what he did as an interim head coach with the Dolphins that one time, and I believe he's a good coach. I just don't know if a head coach fit would be necessary for him, especially in Detroit, out of all places. But especially after hearing what he had to say in his press conference, talking about biting ankles and knees.
Kneecaps.
Yeah. So I honestly thought the Chargers hire Brandon Staley was going to be the hire that the Lions went with if they didn't go with Robert Saleh, because they were looking for a defensive-minded head coach, and he has ties with their new GM hire, who just came from the Rams. So I thought Staley might have went there, even though I still think he needed at least one more year of being a coordinator under his belt. He was only a defensive coordinator for 1 year, so although they say he's a defensive guru, I think he needed more results to put on his resume. So Eric Bieniemy is still out there, and although I said I think he should just wait till next year, I still don't understand why he hasn't got hired. It's blasphemy in my opinion.
We're talking Eric Bieniemy.
Yes.
Oh. Well, so when you're talking in terms of lack of diversity, really for me, there were only two head coaching hires that really, to me, I didn't agree with or didn't make sense to me, and that was the two that you mentioned. It was Dan Campbell and Nick Sirianni. However, a lot, like you said, a lot of the black coaches or coordinators are on teams that were in the playoffs. I mean, they talk about the Bucks having all their coaches and all their coordinators, because Bruce Arians is obviously their head coach, but having every single major coordinator is black, and then obviously Eric Bieniemy is on the Chiefs. So I feel like it has more so to do with the fact that teams don't want those coaching hires to kind of dry up, because we've seen it happen last year with I forget what team, but I don't think teams are as willing anymore to kind of wait for interviews after the season's over. I think they're a lot less willing to do it because they don't want the coaches to be, the coaching hires to dry up. And I think in that sense, they're just trying to go out there and get the coaches that they see fit, or maybe coaches that, like you said, I mean, um, next year for Carson Wentz for the Philadelphia Eagles. The one that really doesn't make sense for me is the Dan Campbell one because he was assistant head coach, tight ends coach. So I'm not really sure what Detroit has in store for Dan Campbell or like what he plans to bring to Detroit other than biting people's kneecaps off. But um, but
he brings it to
yeah,
he
he
brings it
brings it
tenacity. He seems like
tenacity,
he's a
and
player's
so
coach.
that might have been what Detroit saw in him. So, I mean, there's different reasons as to why I think that maybe we aren't seeing as many, you know, diverse hires. But I do think the fact that a lot of these coaches are in playoff teams, and teams aren't as willing to wait anymore. I mean, we've seen plenty of times where teams waited time after time for offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators of the New England Patriots just for them to kind of return, and then the coach is left to kind of go. The team is left to kind of go after candidates that they weren't really necessarily looking at anymore because all the really enticing ones by that time have already dried up. So um, it's probably a mixture of different reasons. Although I would have loved to see a lot more diverse hires. We'll see. We'll have to see how these coaches do. I mean, maybe it's just what they saw was best fit.
I think the hire you're referring to is the Colts, where they hired Josh McDaniels when they were
Yep.
still in the playoffs. The Patriots were still in the playoffs, and he took the job, and then eventually he took back
Yeah.
his acceptance of that job after they already hired some of his staff members, and he stood with New England, and the Colts were left looking for a new coach. They went out and got Frank Reich, which seems like it
Yeah.
worked out perfectly for them. Um, but the one thing that sticks out for me, so I'll pick out one job, for example, Nick Sirianni with the Eagles. It came down to, I think it was him, Josh McDaniels, and Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley has been a minority candidate in terms of a head coach for some time now. Uh, he's the running back coach. He's been their long time running back coach. He's been interviewed for head coaching positions long before. I believe the owner uh, was a fan of his and wanted and was advocating to hire him as their next head coach.
Yeah.
But Howie Roseman wanted to go in a different direction. So they went with Sirianni, and I think it was part because Roseman wants to basically cover his ass in saying that Wentz is the franchise guy. Like, he basically traded everything to get Wentz.
Hmm.
So now he's trying, because if Wentz doesn't work out, maybe it's most likely that his career in Philly is done.
Yeah.
So I think that's why he didn't want to go with Deuce Staley, because Deuce Staley is a running back coach. Although Deuce Staley, I think, probably would have made more sense of a hire in that instance, especially if you're trying to move on from Carson Wentz.
Hmm.
And now Deuce Staley has requested basically for the Eagles to terminate his contract, I guess, because he wants out. He has other interested teams that he wants to pursue, and he doesn't want to stay there in Philly anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it's their loss, honestly, because from the way for how much interest he's been gaining the past couple of years in terms of a head coach, I think eventually he's going to get a job and he's going to prove why he should have been a head coach long time ago.
Definitely.
And we're going to shift over to our last topic of the day. We're going to cover the NFC conference finals or conference championships, the matchups between the Packers and the Bucks, and the Chiefs and the Bills. And then we'll talk about the Super Bowl matchup. Or we can just talk about the Super Bowl matchup. I don't know what you want to do.
No, we can
But
talk about the games.
all right, so from the Packers Bucks, I have little to say. I mean, the Kevin King got fried, and pretty much all game.
Understatement.
And but my thing was that last call, and although he was holding him, I'm not saying it wasn't a hold or a PI. I think the receiver flopped more than he needed to. Like he definitely sold his life away on that one, but I didn't like the call mainly because the Bucks were holding the entire game, and the refs didn't call it. So why make the call? Why not make the call all game, and then you make the call right there and then? That was my only issue with it. Should they have called it in throughout the game and they called it there, I would have no problem with it at all. But I think Brady came out to play. He was balling
That's
from
debatable.
he was balling from the start in terms of his accuracy and picking the holes or finding the holes on that defense. So although he had 3 interceptions, I think he played really well. Shows why some consider him the greatest of all time. Uh, and now we get to see, people like to say baby goat versus
Yeah.
goat, or Yoda versus baby Yoda. So that's all I
No,
really
I
have to
mean,
say.
it was a really good game between the two teams, obviously. I have more problem with what transpired after the game. Obviously, I feel like Aaron Rodgers is receiving a lot of the blame, and people's excuse for that is if they won the game, he'd be receiving a lot of the credit. And we're kind of seeing that on the opposite side, whereas Brady's receiving a lot of the credit, and I don't genuinely believe that he should be receiving so much credit. But I have more so a problem. Obviously, I think the only thing you can blame Aaron Rodgers for is I do think he should have ran on third and goal, or I don't know if it was third and
Oh
goal. I
yes,
think he should have ran on third and goal.
yep.
I think he had the space to score. If not score, he would have definitely had a lot closer fourth and goal and giving his coach a lot more confidence in going for it, which I think they should have done anyways.
They
Yeah,
should have
which
went
I
for it,
think they
not
should have
kick a
done
field
that
goal.
anyways. But I think if he had ran, they would have been really close. I mean, he had a lot of space. I could almost guess that he probably would have been at the 2 or the 1, and that's a lot more comfortable spot to go for it than I think they were at what the 8. So that's one. That's I think the only thing you can blame Aaron Rodgers for at that point. Um, but with that being said, I feel like he's getting a lot of blame for their loss, where I don't think that he should. I think he was the best player on the Packers that day. I think he was let down a lot by his receivers, which you mentioned already. Um, and on another side of that, um, he had. I mean, it's right there on paper for you. He had a better game than Brady did. Yet Brady's
Yeah, for
receiving the
sure.
credit because his team won the game, which is completely understandable. But Brady also, I mean, he had 3 touchdowns, great, but he also had three
3 interceptions.
interceptions. I mean, and if we're being honest with ourselves, he was bailed out by that defense because time and time again the Packers had many of opportunities to score and tie that game up or even go ahead late in that game, and they didn't because that defense. I mean, so Rodgers wasn't able to put up points. One of the best quarterbacks in the league wasn't able to put up points to basically put his team back in that game late in the game because of that defense. Um, I come off as a Brady hater saying that maybe. I don't hate Brady though. However, like I love Tom Brady. He's great. I just think he's receiving a lot of credit for the game where I think a huge share of that credit does belong to that defense. But I mean I have no reason to hate on Brady. He didn't beat my team.
I mean, we both have no reason to hate Brady because we're Giants fans. So he didn't crush our hearts throughout his career. So who cares? But I do agree with you. I was just stating that he came out
Oh,
early
definitely. Yeah,
and he was putting pressure on Green Bay to put up points because he came out throwing
his first
dimes,
half
throwing
was amazing.
darts.
Yeah,
Yeah, so he put pressure on Green Bay to come out and try to retaliate and put up points. But I do agree they did win the game because of that defense. That defense was able to create turnovers and essentially give Brady the opportunity to score. And also give them really good field position. So that being said, I do agree. I do think they should have went for it on fourth down, regardless if Rodgers ran it for it or not. But Rodgers was let down. Rodgers played his heart out and ultimately was let down by Kevin King and those receivers. So that's all you
yeah.
can really blame. You might be able to blame, the play calling on some situations, but it is what it is.
It was a
And
great game nonetheless.
and the Bucks now are the first team that is hosting the Super Bowl to actually make it to the Super Bowl and have home field advantage. So congrats to them. Uh, just adds another thing to Brady's legacy and his resume. But shifting over to the AFC and some guy that's creating a hell of a resume in Patrick Mahomes is I don't know what to say. The Bills just didn't look as explosive as they did in, the weeks prior. And it could be because Patrick Mahomes was on the other side. I was questioning how well he was going to come out and look
I didn't
because
think he was playing the
that
game as soon as I saw him get hurt last week. I didn't think he was
yeah,
playing.
I didn't think he was 100%, but he proved me wrong. I mean, I picked the Chiefs to win it all uh, before the season, and it looks like they have the chance to do just that. So I was just doubting his health at that point, but he came out and proved everyone
So,
wrong. The defense stepped up to and did what they needed to do in terms of slowing the Bills' offense down, and it just goes to show that how high powered that offense is because the Bills, although their defense isn't the greatest, they're not terrible either. They had a really good game in the divisional round, so for Mahomes to come out and do what he
yeah.
did,
I mean,
it's just scary.
yeah, I mean, the way the game started looked great for the Bills, but it was definitely more so due to the errors of the Chiefs. But then after that, the Bills just looked flat. I mean, they just looked like they weren't there to win a football game. Um, the Chiefs are a really good team. And when you have a 9-0 lead early on in the game, uh, you can't expect that you're going to have that 9-point lead even 10 minutes after that. I mean, they're capable of,
You can't get
yeah, you
comfortable.
can't get comfortable at all. And I mean, not to say that the Bills did, but they definitely didn't come out firing like we've seen them, do this season. However, I think the Chiefs should, I mean, the Bills, I should say, sorry. I think the Bills should be happy with what they did this season. I mean, it's undeniable. They made the AFC Championship. Josh Allen had an MVP caliber season. If it hadn't been for, you know, other great players having amazing seasons as well, he's in the conversation.
Yeah, they made a huge jump
Yeah.
and they definitely improved as a team. So
And
that's something really good to build off
yeah,
of.
I mean, and to lose to a team like the Chiefs, at one point, it's like it sucks, but I mean, they're such a great football team. I mean, anytime you lose to the Chiefs, uh, you're comfortable in the fact that you could say you lost to a great football team, genuinely a great football team. Like I said, I wish the Bills would have came out a little bit better. I'm pretty sure they feel the same way. They didn't probably feel like they played their best football because they just looked flat. But I mean, when you're facing a team like the Chiefs, it's really tough in that environment, uh, in the playoffs and against such a high caliber team. But I mean, like I said, they should be happy because I think they'll be back. I'm not saying they'll get as far next year, but they'll be back next year and they'll give teams a run for their money. So
I mean, just goes to show, like the Chiefs. Well, prime example of not being able to get too comfortable against the Chiefs is the Super Bowl last year.
yeah,
But it just goes to show how much improvement that you made this season. The fact that you made it to this far, but you also got to play the team to beat, and now you get to compare yourself and figure out what you need to do this upcoming offseason to even get to beating them.
definitely.
You know what it takes to get there, and you know what it takes to now get over the hump to get to the Super Bowl. So there's pros and cons to this, and shifting over to the Super Bowl matchup, I said the Bucks weren't good enough to make it to the NFC Championship, and they definitely weren't good enough to make it to the Super Bowl. I stand corrected. They are a really good team, and they did it. They won the NFC Championship without Antonio Brown, who should play, which is funny because now Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown made it to the Super Bowl without Big Ben, and both of them didn't even play a snap in the NFC and the AFC Championship, which is even more funny. You can say, and then but this matchup is going to be really interesting. They played earlier in the season, and the Chiefs won 27-24. But I want to see if the Bucks have an answer for Tyreek Hill, because as we know, he blew up against the Bucks in the first half of that game,
Yeah.
where he had, I think, almost 200 or at least 200 yards, but he finished the game with 13 receptions, 269 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So if they can't find an answer for him, they lost the game already. So you might as well just chalk it up.
Yeah.
So, but even if they find an answer for him, maybe that opens the door for Travis Kelce. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard to guard this team, man.
Yeah. I think this will be so. I don't want to say it'll be a completely different game than what I think we saw, because I do think the final result will be very close. But I think it'll be a different game in the sense that the Buccaneers won't start off so slow. Because when they faced off earlier in the season, I believe the Chiefs had a huge lead, and it was basically an uphill battle for the Bucs at that point. So for them to have lost by 3
Yep.
in that game, was impressive in itself. So if the Bucs can come out firing rather than coming out flat the way they did in that game, they have a real chance to win the game. I mean, only having lost by 3 after being down by, I don't recall how many points, but
It was
you know,
17.
yeah, so I'm saying. So being down that much and only going on to lose by 3, you definitely have some confidence coming into this game, knowing that. Especially, well, I will say this: you did say that the Bucks weren't good enough to make the AFC Championship or NFC Championship, sorry, and or even go as far as winning the Super Bowl. And if I'm being honest, they weren't, because they've been completely inconsistent this entire season. Whether it was their offensive side of the ball, more specifically Tom Brady struggling, or when he was going, they couldn't get their defense going. But it looks like that's really all far into the past for them, because they've been firing as of late, especially in these playoffs and later in the season. But I think it's going to be a completely different game in the sense that it's going to be close from the jump. However, I think the Chiefs take it. I think the Chiefs will take it. I believe this will be the second time that Patrick Mahomes faces Brady in the playoffs, and he lost the first matchup. So
By an offsides penalty.
yeah, I mean, he lost the first
Pretty much.
matchup. I think he definitely wants to come in this and prove some people wrong, especially because I mean we saw what happened last week when they were doing the Bills Chiefs comparison. They said that the Bills won in the quarterback category, and Patrick Mahomes lit the Bills up. So I definitely think, as good as he is, Patrick Mahomes, I feel like he tends to always play with a chip on his shoulder, because he knows that it gives him an edge. He just likes having that mentality of being an underdog, even though he is so talented. So almost all the time he's not an underdog. But I feel like he'll take any slight against him and use it as motivation. So I think the Chiefs win a very, very close game. I think it'll be a shootout, honestly.
Yeah, so the Bucks outscored the Chiefs. No, the Chiefs outscored the Bucks 17-0 in the first quarter.
Yep.
And the Bucks outscored the Chiefs 14-0 in the fourth quarter. And they, between the second and the third quarter, they both scored 10 points. So the start and the finish is what's going to make the difference between these teams. They both can rush. I mean, to beat either quarterback, you need only to rush four people. You can't rush anymore, because Patrick Mahomes will he'll find a way to beat you either with his legs or his arm.
Yeah.
Brady will pick you apart if you tend to blitz him more. Like the teams that were successful against Brady in the Super Bowl were teams that were able to rush the passer with only 4 rushers, which were the Eagles and the Giants. Well, the Giants and the Eagles, because the Giants beat them twice. But Mahomes came out and said, I'm paraphrasing here, something along the lines of, it's an honor to play the GOAT in his 100th Super Bowl appearance, or something like that. So he's obviously cracking jokes about it, but he knows Brady's the guy to beat if you want to be the greatest. And he's already faced off against him once in the playoffs, like you mentioned, and he was super close to beat him, and the Patriots went on to, I believe, win the Super Bowl that year. So now he has opportunity at the biggest stage of them all to dethrone him, and that would be a great start to his career, because now he'll have 2 Super Bowls, probably 2 Super Bowl MVPs, and a regular season MVP, and it's only his 4th season and his 3rd year as a starter.
Yeah.
Like, that's scary. But I'm gonna stick to my pick. that I've made since the beginning. I'm going with the Chiefs. I'm riding with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Especially because they have some former Giants on their coaching staff.
Yeah.
So loyalty lies.
Yeah, I'm going with the Chiefs as well. I think if
But
uh, I think if Brady wins the Super Bowl at this stage in his career with a different team, the world might explode. So I don't want to live in that world.
I don't disagree with you. There's a lot of Patriots fans out there who are now considering themselves Bucks fans because of Brady, or they're just rooting for the Bucks because of Brady. There's someone in my barbershop who was a Redskin fan. I won't name names, but
Alright.
he's now considering himself a Bucks fan. Because this year he said he was a Redskins fan, not a Washington fan, and there's no such thing as the Redskins anymore, which doesn't make any sense because they didn't move any stadium, they didn't move stadiums, they didn't change their jersey except instead of the logo is number and instead of Redskins it says Washington. But yeah, there's a lot of bandwagon fans out there rooting for the Bucks. So there's a good family friend of mine, or you consider him a cousin. He's been a Chiefs fan since back then when they had Priest Holmes and Tony Gonzalez. I can continue to name names, but he's living a dream right now. They won last year. He's riding high. And then after they won this year, he sent me a video of him, turning around in a chair talking shit to someone who said the Chiefs wouldn't make it to the Super Bowl again. So he's having fun. I'll be rooting with him in terms of hoping the Chiefs win again. But that's all we have for you guys today. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope, you guys continue to follow us and show love. We're asking. Show, comment, review, help us out, and we'll look to give you guys what you guys are looking for in particular. But if you made it this far, thank you. Thank you for tuning in per usual. Go check us out. Go check our guys out at the Expansion Pack Podcast. If you're a gaming fan, this podcast for you. But that's all I have. Jovan, if you want to add anything.
No, just we appreciate it as always. Thank you for tuning in. For continuously following us. And like Devin said, leave comments. We love hearing from you guys and seeing, what you guys feel about certain things. So, just leave some comments.
And until next time, peace.
Peace.
You're talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love.